What is up, Fantasyland? Welcome to the GOAT District, where we bring in the VIP guests, the biggest winners, the biggest players in fantasy. And guys, it's that time. We've spent all offseason getting you guys prepped, bringing in the guests, the winners. We had $750,000 winners, $200,000 winners, just big money winners talking about how they're playing the game throughout the offseason at different stages. You know, whether you're drafting, redraft, dynasty, everything's been done, man. You made all the moves. You might have a few drafts left, trying to sneak some in, before the kickoff on Thursday. And you might have some trades left to make. And that's what we're going to do tonight, guys. We bring in two big bangers. Obviously, they've been on the district before. And we're going to dive into some, we call them the traps. Guys you want to avoid. So smash the like, smash the subscribe. We're going to bring it like we do on the regular. Guys, grab your beer, grab your pen and paper. Those shoes, because we about to dance.
GOAT District, the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offer's the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
What is up, Fantasyland? Welcome back to the district. Hopefully you guys can't hear the pounding rain above my head because we're just getting pelted up here in the GTA. Dan, how you doing, brother? Big show tonight. One of our favorite shows. We were talking before we came on with a couple of our favorite guests returning on the district tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is such a great show to do, and it's so timely. And the guys that we have on tonight are just as sharp as they come. They may not be the biggest of household names, but I guarantee you anybody who's playing some high stakes fantasy knows who these guys are. So going to be a great show, and we're going to get a lot of good nuggets today.
For sure, guys. Like I said in the intro, smash the like, the subscribe, help the show out. We keep bringing the goodness. Tonight is no different. We want to get you ready. I know you've got those, 2 or 3 more drafts in you. And while you're setting up your lineups for week 1, for sure, you're looking at trades to maybe you got some ticking time bombs on your roster. And tonight we're going to talk about those with 2 of our favorite guests, Dan. And you said it, maybe not the biggest household names, but I know this man that we're going to bring in first. One of our most downloaded shows before we got onto the YouTube machine, Noah Ruddell. Welcome to the district, brother.
Happy to be here. I've been in Yellowstone for the last week and a half, 2 weeks, and did a lot of hiking, did a lot of mountain climbing, had a really nice summer overall, more laid back than most of the summers that I've had. So glad to be back home and able to do a little bit of fantasy stuff at the end to wrap up the season before we get actual NFL kicked off.
Yeah, and we appreciate you joining us again in the district for Dan and I's one of our favorite shows for sure. Talking the traps, going into the season, and our other guest Dan, he likes to drop some shockers out there in Twitter land. He likes to talk a bit of poker. Both of these guys, big strategy guys, and just great follows in Twitter land, not only for fantasy, but for different things that we talked about before we came on the camera. Mr. Hilo, welcome back to the district, brother.
What's going on, gents? Appreciate having me back. That was a lot of fun last year doing the show, and looking forward to it again. So shout out to the GOAT District.
It's a trap.
There it is, boys. You're going to be hearing it a lot tonight. So smash the like, and if you're watching right now, in the comments, tell us your avoids. Tell us, guys, that you've been dodging all off season, especially now with some of the news, whether it's injuries, guys getting cut. A lot of bullets to dodge out there in fantasy land. Guys, let's get right into it. Again, make sure you're following these guys at Noah Ruddell, NoahRuddell. And then our boy Hilo, HILOWFF on the Twitter machine. What up to Kev and Ben in the chat? Always there to support. We appreciate you guys and keep dropping the comments and the questions, guys. I'm gonna go to you first, Noah. Today, you joked before we came on board on air about two of your guys that you had ready for tonight's show, and their stock kind of changing today, and that's what we love about the NFL, right? Always keeping us on our toes. So if you want to touch on that now, let's get right into the New Orleans situation. Latavius Mary, I'm sure you got the zero RB squad. Are probably loaded up with some Murray action. How were you feeling about him before today's news? And how do you feel this affects his shares in Fantasyland?
Well, so he was going to be one of my it's a traps, just because he's one of those guys people like to pick up as a later running back that they think they can get some weekly starts out of, and even have a little bit of upside with Alvin Kamara potentially missing time at some point during the season. But for me, he was an avoid because he wasn't going to be the guy. In fact, I thought that he was either going to be cut or he was going to be inactive on game days in order to save salary towards the salary cap, because he had already pretty much lost his job to Tony Jones Jr. So Tony Jones was going to be the guy over him anyway. And so, Latavius Murray was going around the 9th or 10th round in drafts when he was more likely to be inactive on game day than he was being a contributor to your fantasy roster. So I was going to have him as one of my avoids. But now he's been released. So I think that if you are someone who owns Latavius Murray, your ideal situation is maybe he lands with the Chargers, for example. I think the Chargers is one of the better fits for him, because we know that the Chargers don't really view Austin Eckler as a goal line back. He's a little bit of a smaller guy, and he even has said that he doesn't really fit that role very well. And, the Chargers have recently brought in Lombardi to be their OC, and he's, got a lot familiar with Latavius Murray from New Orleans, and is probably looking for some, similar utility, because they really don't have a good goal line back on the Chargers right now. And so I think that would be a good fit. Not sure that there are many other good fits out there, but I think that if you own Latavius Murray, that's probably your best hope for salvaging some value there.
Mark, any preferred destinations or thoughts on where you think Latavius lands, and what's the ripple effect for you with the Saints dropping the running back today?
Yeah, with Latavius in particular, I don't think it really matters where he lands. He's very unlikely to have any utility. I mean, he's showing the signs of his age and the wear and tear that he's had over the course of his career. He would be more of a depth piece and like a change of pace minus wherever he went. And he would have the potential to land as a goal line back if he landed at the exact right spot. But other than that, I'm not really worried about where he's going or what he's going to do. It's really unlikely to affect a backfield very heavily.
Wheeler just drops that he old. Dan, I kind of had a bit of hope just with the passing situation being iffy out in New Orleans. What are your thoughts on the move for the Saints, or the ripple effect, as we say, and any hopes on where Latavius lands?
Yeah, I kind of agree on Latavius. I just don't think that he's going to really have a great deal of value. I mean, you might have a good game or two out of him, but good luck trying to predict when those are, and that's even if he lands in a decent situation. So I'm sure that when the injuries start hitting, somebody's going to sign him up and get him in there, but he's not going to be probably a very high priority for me. And Tony Jones, I mean, he certainly looked like he had more juice than Latavius, though. Again, we're kind of saying that's a low bar to cross. So, exactly how much he would get behind Kamara. I think Kamara is going to get all the work he can handle for sure. And, this just helps solidify Kamara as one of those, top 3 running backs, really. And Tony Jones, I mean, if something happened to Kamara, I'm sure he would get a fair amount of work, but, I don't know that he's going to have standalone value. And if something does happen to Kamara, I would be looking for the Saints to probably make a trade if, the trade deadline hasn't passed by that time.
Guys, tomorrow night, I know it's all your favorite, my favorite night of the week as we go into the season with waiver wires a la FFPC. Is Jones a guy that you're putting some of that fob? Help our audience out a bit here. Is this something that you're trying to get ahead and maybe hit on something early in the season, or are you going to pass and sit back to see where this running game goes?
I think Tony Jones should definitely be rostered. I mean, if he's out there on waivers, you should be picking him up. I mean, if you were doing a fantasy draft right now, he would probably go in the 10th round, maybe the 11th round.
Yeah,
of fantasy draft right now. So a player going there is really a player that should be on somebody's roster. He's kind of in that tier, maybe close to, maybe just behind Tony Pollard as a guy that is going to get some work week to week, but then also has potential upside if something happens to the starter ahead of him. So he should definitely be on somebody's roster, and if he's out there, he's worth a waiver ad, but I wouldn't necessarily throw all of my money at him. Not like, if you were trying to go get Gus Edwards, if Gus Edwards were available when J.K. Dobbins went down or anything like that. But, he's a reasonable speculative pickup.
Let's go to anything to add, guys, before we go to Tampa.
I would just caution on bidding too aggressively on Tony Jones. He's you look at his athletic profile compared to Kamara, and he would not be like a direct replacement. So he would be a guy that it profiles a little bit better towards the goal line and more of a straight line runner, which is almost counter the way that the Saints have built that offense and that offensive line. That offensive line is the best offensive line in football for getting to the second level and for creating those run lanes in the second level. So a little bit less dynamic of a back and likely to have far less utility than a guy like Gus Edwards, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, if something happened to Kamara, they would definitely mix in Ty Montgomery some for passing downs. It wouldn't become, a bell cow situation for Tony Jones, but he would still be a guy that would be a weekly starting running back if anything happened to Alvin Kamara. He wouldn't be as high end as Tony Pollard would be if Zeke was injured, but he would still be a weekly starter.
Yeah, I think like 16 to 18 touches with goal line.
Yeah.
Dan, T-Bay, Dallas, Thursday night. The Buck receivers, for some reason, from my perspective, feel like avoids for a lot of people this offseason. I don't know, maybe because one wasn't around, or maybe they weren't around as much on the field together, and people have a fear with those targets being split up. Just with Godwin dealing with a bit of a hiccup health-wise right now, I thought we could just quickly go around. Dan, give us your thoughts on Godwin, the 2 receivers in Tampa, or any avoid specifically in that offense.
Yeah, I don't really have any avoids in the passing game there in Tampa. I think Tom Brady is going to be lighting it up this year. Tom Brady is one of my absolute favorite quarterbacks to acquire.
Dan loves his Brady.
I got Brady all over the place. So, and anything that makes Godwin a little bit cheaper, in these final, few days of drafting, I'm all about that. So, I'll take a little bit of a, kind of an injury discount there if I can. And I think a lot of people are, probably justifiably concerned about Antonio Brown cutting into Godwin's, targets and production as well. But, I do think that there's room for all three wide receivers, plus a tight end and, even a pass catching back. I think it's going to be a little bit tougher to tell week to week. I mean, I love getting those guys at best ball and in managed leagues. I probably got Mike Evans ahead of Godwin anyway. But I'll take that discount on Godwin if it's coming.
All right. As I get dumped on over here, hopefully, again, it's not too loud. Dan, is it like super loud, or are you guys?
No.
Okay,
No,
good.
just a little fuzzy, not bad at all.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't have any concerns on the Bucks passing game. I think that Tom Brady, if we want to get a hot take out of the way,
Oh
no.
Froze right when the hot take comes.
Yeah, right.
We didn't set this up, guys. This was not a setup. Smash the like to get the answer.
We'll get him back on here in a second. But yeah, what do you think, Mark, on the Tampa Bay passing game while we're waiting for Noah to come back?
Yeah, I'm not at all worried about the Tampa passing game. The only issue is you have to realize that they're going to come with high variance week to week, specifically with the wide receivers. Talk about Godwin, talk about Evans. These guys are going to see 12, 14 targets some weeks, and then the next week they're going to see 4 to 6. So better targets and best ball. If you are drafting them as your wide receiver 2 in managed leagues, it's better to do so with a volume wide receiver 1, as opposed to, I see a lot of guys, pairing like Mike Evans with AJ Brown, and that's going to carry that. You're just increasing your weekly variance in a managed league to where you're going to blow out a team one week and then get smoked the next week. So managing that weekly variance in a managed league is a little bit more important when talking about this Tampa Bay passing attack.
Noah, the professional you are, just set this up perfectly. We told everybody to just smash the like to get the answer to your build-up, because you cut out right when the name drop was about to come. But please continue.
Yeah,
I was going to say, if we want a hot take, I think Tom Brady is going to throw 50 touchdowns, and he's going to outscore Patrick Mahomes this year in fantasy.
Dan just got a hard on right there.
Yeah.
And I think that Antonio Brown is going to outperform most of the receivers going into the 2 or 3 rounds ahead of him in ADP.
Well,
I think it's all three, and all three are fine where they're going ADP wise. I don't have any Chris Godwin, but I do have a lot of Mike Evans, just because he's kind of a go-to 4th round pick for me, because he seems to always be there in the 4th. Like I think that the secondaries in the NFL are maybe the worst that they've ever been right now, right at the same time as offenses are figuring out how to take advantage of the NFL's new rules, more than they have in the past. And so in general, I think you're going to see some prolific passing outcomes this season. And I think Tom Brady is set up to take full advantage of that. He's got one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. They do not want to run the football. They do not need to run the football. He has all of the weapons that he could want to throw to. He's got a full season with Antonio Brown now, and he's got Giovanni Bernard now as an actual pass-catching running back that they didn't have last season. So I think a whole lot of the volume that team has is just going to flow through Tom Brady, and 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns, and overall top 3 quarterback is in his range of outcomes. So that would be my hot take for the Tampa Bay passing offense.
We actually have a clip of Tom at the line of scrimmage here the other day.
You want to play rough? Okay. Say hello to my little friend.
Mark, anything to add it with the Tampa sitch before we get into the goodness for tonight?
No, but Noah alluded to the weakness of the secondaries across the NFL, and that also rings true with the defensive coordinators. I mean, Lovie Smith picked up a defensive coordinator job this offseason, and he's running the Tampa 2 out, which is 5 years antiquated. So, the defensive coordinators are going to have a rough go. And we saw a lot of defensive coordinator turnover this season, and there's going to be a lot more next season as well.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
All right, boys. Sorry, I keep unmuting just because it gets a little loud. Guys, tons of goodness already as we skip through the headlines. We try to do it rapid fire-ish. But as we get into the goodness now, we all came for the traps, right? We all – there's those guys that you avoid – as you draft, guys you see on your roster that you try to move for specific reasons. So that's what we're going to hit on tonight. We're going to get a little specific. But to start it on kind of the macro level, Noah, I'll go to you first. Who's like your biggest avoid this offseason? As we get in, we're days, hours away from week 1.
I think that it's fairly, ADP is pretty reasonable this year, but I don't like really any of the running backs that are going in the first round after the top 2 or 3. So I guess for me, it would be all of the running backs going after Alvin Kamara, and a little bit of that. I would say I don't have any Dalvin Cook in the leagues that I've drafted that are managed leagues, just because I have a lot of injury concerns with him that I don't think that you can expect to get a full season out of him by any stretch. If you do, it would be a very narrow outcome, maybe a 10 or 15% outcome. He's just got so many issues with his shoulder and other things that he's just not a guy that I've dedicated a lot of draft capital to. But that next group of guys like Derrick Henry and Ezekiel Elliott. Normally I'm a big fan of Derrick Henry. I've been heavy on him in past seasons when he was going with a later ADP, but now that he's up, in the top half of the first round, it's just a really thin pick to be making, in my opinion, when he's coming off of a career season where he had over 2,000 rushing yards with a new offensive coordinator, with Julio Jones in town. I just think that's a pick where you're really hoping for a top end outcome in order for him to even justify his ADP. So I'm not really high on Derrick Henry. You may be surprised to hear that I'm not really high on Ezekiel Elliott either. I do think, let me put a caveat to this. I do think Zeke will have his best season since his rookie season for fantasy purposes. He's going to have his most productive season since his rookie season, but he's still being overdrafted. Because, it's a little bit too high for me where he's going now, but he's not necessarily the stonefish pick that he was the last 4 years.
So before I go to the other gentleman, because I know you are a part-time driver of the Tony Pollard fan club bus. So guys like Darrington Evans, Pollard, Madison, did they become bigger parts of your portfolio because of these thoughts, or do you just avoid it altogether because you don't think it's going to trickle down significantly enough for it to sit with those 3 guys?
Yeah, I don't think it necessarily trickles down to those guys to where those guys are viable weekly starter type players. I think Derrick Henry's going to get most of the running back opportunity on the Titans. I think that he's got to have another historic level season on the ground because he doesn't get enough passing work in order to pay off his ADP. So it's a little bit thin to me. Like if I'm in that pick, I'm sitting there and I'm staring down Derrick Henry, I'm probably just going to take a wide receiver or Travis Kelce. I was in that decision on Saturday night and I went ahead and took Travis Kelce instead of taking Derrick Henry or Ezekiel Elliott. I just took Travis Kelce earlier because he's got a chance to really pay off that pick pretty easily. And I can take Nick Chubb in the second round after taking Travis Kelce in the first round. And I think Nick Chubb should be in the same tier with Derrick Henry and Ezekiel Elliott. So it's more just opportunity cost for what those guys will take for me to get them. And I don't really want to spend an early pick on that. Like I'd rather have Aaron Jones than Ezekiel Elliott or Derrick Henry. Just situationally, I'd rather have Aaron Jones, and I think Nick Chubb should be in that same group as those other two guys. So for me, it's just I'd rather take a wide receiver or Kelsey and pair him with Nick Chubb than spend one of those picks and then be stuck. What would you rather have? Devontae Adams and Nick Chubb, or Derrick Henry and DK Metcalf? I just think you look at it as the trade-off of what you get round 1 versus round 2. But, that's just for the first round. I've got some other thoughts for later rounds, but I'll let Hillo get something off of his chest.
Yeah, I completely agree with the running backs in the first round. The most salient point to me is the last one I think Noah made, which was you have to look at the comparative value of cost of acquisition. And when you have guys in the early second or late first, like Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill is the second most efficient wide receiver in the game, and he's playing with Mahomes. You have a guy like Diggs who could push for 170 targets this year. Devontae Adams, who could score 15, 20 touchdowns. So these guys behind the Zeke and the Derrick Henry kind of semi-tier of running backs, basically just the opportunity cost of having to take them there, again, like Noah was saying, I would rather take Kelsey or one of those aforementioned wide receivers. Even Calvin Ridley. I mean, Calvin Ridley could pop for 165 targets this year as well. So along the same line of thinking, I'm going to parlay that into my kind of next tier of running backs to fade. And that's going to be David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs, and then dependent on where he's going, Miles Sanders. The thing with Miles Sanders is he carries high PPR value because we know that offense, based on who they brought in this offseason, is going to utilize the running backs in the pass game. So if he's going early third round, I'm out there. But he's been dropping, I've seen like early fifth, middle of fifth round, and he's a smash there just for the PPR upside. But for Josh Jacobs specifically, basically in the span of like a year and a half, he goes from a top 3 offensive line to now like a bottom 7 offensive line. And he's not involved in the pass game. Then you talk about David Montgomery. The Bears averaged 4.1 yards per carry last season, and they targeted the running backs only 14.8% of the time. So you have and Matt Nagy is taking over play calling duties again. And the splits with him calling plays, he averaged like 13.8 fantasy points or something like that per game. So those are 2 running backs where I am going in the same range as wide receivers like Allen Robinson, who has averaged 9.6 targets per healthy game over the last 5 seasons, which is insane. So, I mean, again, opportunity cost, I'm just smashing Allen Robinson all day. Even Keenan Allen is taken sometimes around those 2 backs. So
anytime your offense is struggling and you want to fix something, like the answer is always to let Matt Nagy make more decisions. I think that's your path to ultimate success.
If anyone is confused, he's being facetious.
The guy couldn't figure his way out of a brown paper bag.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would definitely agree that if you're picking a bear and if you're at the end of the third round and you're picking a bear, picking David Montgomery over Allen Robinson doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I would go so far as to say you should be taking Damian Williams at the end of most of your drafts, because I think there's a lot more potential there at ADP than there is with David Montgomery.
Concur.
All right. Well, let's see.
Some fades from Dan.
Yeah, I'm going to throw in Saquon here, as long as we're in the first couple rounds. Saquon Barkley is definitely a fade for me. Even when he's slipping into the second round, he'd need to slip into the late second round for me to really want to grab him. I don't have a lot of faith in that offense. I don't have a lot of faith in that offensive line. I don't have a lot of faith in how well Barkley is healed, and I don't have a lot of faith in Daniel Jones checking down. I mean, Saquon's best year came with Eli Manning at the helm, and he was checking down and just feeding the ball to Saquon. We didn't see that out of Daniel Jones when we had Jones and Saquon playing together very much. And then you add in Jason Garrett, who also doesn't feature the running back very much in the passing game, plus being just a colossal idiot anyway. All these factors put together, along with, Saquon coming back from a really major knee injury. I mean, this was more than just a simple ACL tear. And when you start getting more than one ligament involved, to me, I mean, I'm going to need to see a healthy year before I'm going to jump back in on that running back at all. So for all those reasons, I'm definitely out on Saquon. I'd much rather around the same point where you're getting Saquon. A lot of times you can get Gibson, you can get Chubb, you can get Aaron Jones, guys like that. And I would much rather go that way than take Saquon.
You guys have anything to add on Saquon Barkley?
I think he's reasonably healthy, and I think he'll play week 1. So I'm not really worried about his health, but the Jason Garrett factor is definitely a problem. Jason Garrett should not be an offensive coordinator in the NFL, and their offensive line's not very good either. So I think there's a lot of potential ways that could go poorly for you, despite Saquon being a significant talent. So I think there's a lot of angles there that are fadeable.
Hey, Noah.
Jelly.
We got some NFT talk in the room. What's up, Andrew?
Mint it. Let's do it.
I love it. Mint the first one. One of one. But wait, let him grow his flow back. If you're going to do a Dan NFT, you got to have the flow in the picture.
I don't know about that.
I mean, mine is, everybody knows my avoid in those early rounds. For sure, Kyle Pitts in the 3rd round. Get the fuck out. Come on, man. That's the draft capital for me is just, give me a lot of those names around him. I just keep it simple. The rookie tight end history tells us that, he's got to score 100% on his exam to give you that value back. So that's my opinion.
What if he's not really playing tight end?
Exactly.
I get it, but Dan, who was it that came on our show and said if your reason for drafting this player is that he's not going to play the position that he got drafted for, it's probably not a good argument. Again, he's got to learn this whole new position, right? Because he comes in as a tight end. So let's say he does play receiver. Is he just going to come in and become one of the best receivers in the game?
Yeah, that's the idea.
I'll put my money on the other side.
I'll put it this way. I've slowly come around to Pitts when he falls, but there are just so many other good players around that area that I can draft. That's the main argument for me against Pitts. So.
Yeah, I agree on that. I don't have much of Pitts just because of where he goes, but I think 1,000 yards would not be that out of the question for him, which is great as a tight end, if you're especially in tight end premium, but with where he goes, I think it's at least fairly priced in, if not slightly overpriced.
Right. Yeah. Though, Mark, I think you had a tweet a couple days ago on.
Sorry.
No problem. Yep. We'll get back to that tweet later.
We'll get back to it.
We'll get back to it.
So yeah, and that's all it is with Pitts. It's more the opportunity cost. For me, it's Noah, we were talking like crypto and stuff where you're going to place your bets, and you can put your money on a sure bet and you could put your money on the high risk, but for me, it's how much are you spending on each one of those bets, right? To get the reward. And that's what it comes down to. I'm fine with Pitts doing what everybody hopes he does, and not being on board with that, but getting a similar growth or similar production from other guys that I'm producing, that I'm picking up in that area.
Yeah, people are paying the price for him to have a rookie breakout season. It's priced in at this point. So, if it doesn't happen, then you're ahead of the game by fading him. But he's already priced close to where he should be. So,
no.
So, Mark, what was that tweet you had a couple days ago on? It was on Pitts and Ridley, right?
Yeah. So basically, I was basically a full fade on Pitts in the third. Then about 2 weeks ago, he started slipping late fourth, early fifth, even sometimes. And I was drafting as many teams as I could in that time frame and just smashing Pitts in that range. Basically, that offense, not much has changed from what we can expect. They did bring in Dean Pease to take over for the defense, but the personnel that they have on the roster on the defensive side of the ball does not mesh well with a Dean Pease offense, which is highly complex, or sorry, a defense, which is highly complex. They're going to be looking for in-game shifts, heavy shifts from zone, from blitz rates to man, to all kinds of different unique coverages, from 4-2-5, cover 3 to single high safety. He's going to be all over the place with blitz rates and all that stuff, and that's going to take probably half of the season at least to really get the talent that he has, or the lack thereof, on the defensive side of the ball, really picking up that defense. So then you look at the offense, and it's going to be highly concentrated. They have Calvin Ridley, they have Russell Gage at wide receiver position. On paper, I expect the offense to look a lot like, or to appear as if they're running a lot of 12 personnel. But again, Kyle Pitts not really playing a traditional tight end role. So you're going to basically have Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, Kyle Pitts, and Hayden Hurst on the field as the pass catchers. And they do have a capable pass catching running back who we could talk at a different time about him, how I feel, but I am high on Mike Davis as well. But anyway, so you have an offense that starts to resemble a little bit something of like a Kansas City Chiefs, like 90% of a Kansas City Chiefs offense, where you have like Tyreek Hill equaling Calvin Ridley, who I'd expect Calvin Ridley again to push 160, 165 targets. And you have Kyle Pitts, who is who I expect to be the secondary option, more like a 1A, 1B, as Kansas City has like Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. So we have volume, we have a capable quarterback, and we have a defense who is likely to struggle for most of the year. And you have a concentrated offense. And those are basically checking all the 4 boxes of what I'm looking for. So I was hammering Kyle Pitts when he fell into the late fourth pretty heavily. He's creeping back up now to where you're having to spend an early fourth, sometimes even a late third, which I'm kind of passing on. But once you start getting past that Allen Robinson range of wide receivers, I have no problem taking Kyle Pitts.
All right, I just had to go make sure the flood situation in the basement wasn't too crazy. We can let it go a little higher. So we've talked tight ends, we've talked running backs in the top end. Dan, if we trickle down to receiver, I'll go to you first, and then we'll go to our guests. Is there anyone in the top echelon of that receiver position that you are avoiding in those early rounds?
Nobody too much that I'm really avoiding in the top echelon. Once you get down into the mid-range, but most of the receiver values, I mean, relative to other receivers, I think it's been pretty well, ADP is fairly on point in my mind anyway, with a couple exceptions. One of them is Julio Jones. I'm just not really seeing him in the basically in the 5th round. I would rather be getting either a different wide receiver there or going a different way in the 5th round. A lot of times, I might go with a running back there, maybe even a tight end, depending on the format. But that's a place where I don't really see Julio as being an absolute smash pick there. Partially because of his age. He's had trouble putting together big seasons, partially because of changing teams and, learning a new offense. So I just see that as being a little bit of a difficult one to swallow. If he was going around later, I would be all over him. But in the 5th, it's a little bit tough.
Yeah, I just couldn't pull the trigger on Julio a few times. Noah, I'll go to you. How do you feel about the Tennessee wide receiver 1B, I guess, or 2? And anyone else in the upper tiers when it comes to receiver that you've been avoiding? You're on mute, brother.
I think Julio is fine where he goes if he stays healthy all year, but I think that's a big question mark for him. I think you're more likely to see him play 8 or 9 games than play the full season. So that makes me a little bit hesitant to take him where he's going. But I do like to take Adam Thielen. Sorry, not Adam Thielen. I'm looking at an ADP sheet right now, and Adam Thielen was jumping out at me. But I do like to take his quarterback because I think that increasing the passing options in the Titans' offense overall just makes it so that you can take Ryan Tannehill with a lot more confidence. I think he's a really sneaky quarterback one that you can usually get later in drafts. But that's really the impact for Julio to me. I haven't been taking much of Julio in the late 4th, early 5th. But if he was there late 5th, early 6th, I'd be more interested. But it's just a matter of how willing are you to fill in for him when he has 5 weeks, and are there receivers that you can find later that you can fill in for him if he's injured for a week. So, but that would be my main concern, just at his age and with his health problems.
Okay. Well, before we jump too far into wide receivers, I want to jump back real quick. Gus Edwards is going about mid-5th round right now. Where are you guys on Gus at that range?
That's appropriate.
I would take him significantly earlier than that.
You would take him earlier?
Yes. I would take him over Chris Carson, probably. So, where Chris Carson goes, that's about where Gus Edwards should be going, true value-wise, but you can usually get him later, so I try to get him later. I tried to get him in a high-stakes draft that I had on Saturday night, and he went 1 pick ahead of me, which made me very unhappy because I started out with Travis Kelce, and then so I took Travis Kelce, and then I took A.J. Brown, then I took Allen Robinson, and then I took DJ Moore. So I had a really strong, 0 RB start, and I was like, I can just take Gus Edwards and, Damian Harris and be off to the races, and it just didn't work out because he went 1 pick ahead of me. But no, I am fine taking Gus Edwards as my running back 1 on a 0 RB team all day.
Dan, I'm gonna let Mark add his comments, but remind me to come back to Noah. I want to know what that Thielen thought was.
It was draft him in the 5th. That's what it was.
Yeah, it was draft Thielen every time that you possibly can. Yeah. Like just smash that pick if he's there in the 5th round.
Yeah.
I was just staring at it because his ADP is at 502 in main events, and I'm just like, oh.
See, I've got the main, and he's end of the 4th, beginning of the 5th. That's exactly where he is. Yeah, so Maine has him at 412, but then Football Guys has him at 502. It was Football Guys I was looking at. But yeah, it's similar formats, but Football Guys has him a little bit later, 502. Do you, Noah, just curiosity, do you weigh one heavier than the other when you're looking at those between the main event and the Football Guys? I mean, you would expect the main event to draft sharper. In my experience, they don't necessarily do that. Okay. So, they draft differently, but it's not necessarily sharper. It's just, it's mostly just noisy between the two. I've tried to study the difference between the two and see if there was value to it. And it seems like in the main events, the quarterbacks go a little bit later than they do in the Football Guys, which is a little bit of a sharper tendency. But the rest of the ADP, as far as, which players are good and which players, it's sharper on positional value, but it's not sharper on which players are actually good values versus which players are not good values, if that makes any sense. Right. And then as we start getting into the last few days of the main, you start seeing a lot of people, chasing picks up the draft board. So sometimes it gets a little silly by Friday and Saturday. Yeah. Adam Thielen will probably have some touchdown regression this season because he had a ton of touchdowns last year. But even if he had half as many touchdowns, like if you took away half of his touchdowns from last year and said, here's his touchdown regression, he's still going too late. Yeah. And with Irv gone, I mean, that just, it further narrows the passing tree there. One more running back before we get back to the wide receivers. How about James Robinson, where he's going? How do you guys feel about him?
Appropriate as well.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate, but I think you're going to have some pretty painful bust weeks along the way. Mm-hmm. You'll have some struggle bust weeks along the way that don't feel great. Like I think I would slightly rather have Gus Edwards to James Robinson at this point, but James Robinson will probably get a little bit more passing work, but I don't think that he's going to have the full share of the rushing down work. So, maybe for full PPR, James Robinson is a better value than 0.5 PPR.
On the clock, boys, how we do it here in the district. DeAndre Swift or James Robinson, Noah?
See, that's interesting because the problem with DeAndre Swift is he's likely not the goal line back with Jamal there, but that's one of the things where it doesn't really hurt him that much because his team's never going to be at the goal line. So is there really that much value with being the goal line back if your team's never scoring anyway? So
delayed air horn there.
I would still lean Swift over Robinson, but it's just because I think the Jaguars are going to be a little bit all over the place in how they play this year. I think it's going to be a little bit messy as they try to figure things out, and Urban Meyer's going to interfere in a lot of the things that the offense is doing, a lot of the operations that they're going through, and he's going to try and say, okay, well let's give Carlos Hyde a week where Carlos Hyde's the guy and see how he does. We're frustrated. James Robinson fumbled, so we're gonna bench him and we're gonna play Carlos Hyde the rest of the way. I think there's going to be a lot more variability on the Jaguars as far as how they deploy all of their players. So I don't have a whole lot of Jaguars players very high. I think you can take Trevor Lawrence with confidence because he's going to have some rushing upside and he's going to throw the ball fairly well. But and they played the Houston Texans twice, which is fantastic. But I think I'd take too. Yeah, I think I'd take Swift over James Robinson, but I don't really have much of the two of them.
Yeah, Lawrence's price in those big tourneys is just too much to pass up sometimes. He's not a guy I planned on drafting, but the upside and the cost was so good. Mark, I'm going to go to you. This time we're going to go James Robinson or Chris Carson?
James Robinson for me slightly, just because of that offense. It's going to be a real Frankenstein offense. I just broke down all 32 teams and really found the Jaguars to be this enigma of an expected offense. They're going to have basically three talking heads that have input. They're going to have, Urban Meyer head coach. They're going to have their offensive coordinator, Darrell Bevel, and then they're going to have their pass game coordinator, Schottenheimer, who they're all going to be talking heads in this offense. So one thing I think that's going to do is it's not going to be predictable. But again, at the same time, it's not going to be predictable. So like pluses and negatives there. But as far as James Conner now, I think with Travis Etienne being out for the season, they're going to give some of what they were trying to do with Etienne over to James Robinson, kicking him out of the backfield, putting him in bunch formations in the slot, like this weird like hybrid college Darrell Bevel offense that they're going to try and be running. So I like him for additional PPR upside. As when compared to like Chris Carson, like half PPR, it's going to be probably Chris Carson, but with the expected receptions, I got to lean James right there.
Dan, for obvious reasons, our friend Mark has James Conner on the brain, but we all know he meant J-Rob.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Hey, sometimes I listen to stuff and you hear the guy make a mistake and nobody says anything. I'm like, I'd rather just correct it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the professional way to do it.
Last year, every time I wanted to say Lamar Jackson, I came out with Lamar Miller. It was just awful.
You guys are killing me. My air horn is so far away. There it is. So Dan, I'm not going to make it so easy on you, brother. This is my question to you. Do you rather grab James Robinson in the third, or do you rather get your boy Darrell Henderson or Damian Harris in the sixth?
I'll take Damian Harris in the sixth.
Just saying.
Darrell Henderson is, I think he's really an enigma right now. And as a matter of fact, I just came out of an FFC draft where Sony Michel won a pick before Darrell Henderson, which I thought was, interesting.
What? One way to do it.
Yep, no doubt. But anyway,
Stafford.
What's that?
Sorry, the answer is Stafford.
Yeah, exactly. And
Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take either of those
Nice.
guys for
Love
sure.
hearing that. Yeah. Nice. So, all right, guys, if you haven't done it yet, smash the like, smash the subscribe. We're about you. Either of you guys, I probably should ask you this before, but any curfews tonight? Any deadlines? No, I know you got like a million things to make $1 bajillion off of, but can we keep you a bit longer?
Yeah, no, I don't have anything going until a little while later. I've got like 4 hours of stuff.
Don't give us too much time, Noah. Don't give it because we'll milk
I
every
don't.
second.
The thing is, I don't sleep, so it doesn't really matter that much.
That explains a lot. There you go.
Yeah.
All right, guys, myffpc.com. Like we said, you want to squeeze in some drafts before the season starts, and you want to win 6 digits doing it. Go check out the FFPC, whether it's their best ball for 125, as our boy Wheeler is in the middle of drafting, whether it's the football guys, the main event, live. You want to fly to Vegas and meet Dan out there. He's going to be out there representing and drafting some goodness with our boy Theo, and as well as Andrew. But guys, let's keep going with the avoids. This is a question, maybe it's best ball, maybe it's redraft. I don't think it applies to Dynasty, but do the offenses play a factor? Like, are there offenses that you avoid specifically? I know, Noah, you talked about, the Lions, they're not getting anywhere near the goal line anyways. So does that mean maybe you're avoiding certain offenses, or are you just basing it specifically on the individual players?
Yeah, it's got a lot to do with the offenses. I mean, there are some teams where their number 3 wide receiver is more valuable to me than someone else's number 1 wide receiver. If you look at fantasy ADP right now, there are some teams that you can get through a whole fantasy draft and none of their receivers go off of the board. I did one draft recently where none of the Patriots wide receivers were drafted, and afterwards I tweeted that people were too low on the Patriots passing game because I think the Patriots will actually have a decent passing game. But like on the, do you really want weapons on the Texans, for example, or players on the the Lions is another good one. I'll throw out the Steelers in there. I don't really want Steelers players. I think they are drawing more live to be last in their division than they are to be first. I think that their most likely outcome is being third in their division, but last is not far behind. I think they could reasonably come in last in the AFC North and just be somewhat of a mess. Their offensive line is a mess. Big Ben is not what he used to be. And so, I look at a guy like Deontay Johnson, who is currently going ahead of Adam Thielen, and that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why would I take Deontay Johnson at 409 instead of Adam Thielen at 502, or even some other players that are available in that same range? And then Chase Claypool goes right after Deontay Johnson. He goes at 507 in the main event. Chase Claypool's at 507. Deontay Johnson's at 4.9, and then Juju isn't far behind the two of them. So all 3 of those receivers are going in the top 6 rounds, and I think that team could be pretty awful. They've got a running back that's going right at the 1-2 turn in Najee Harris. I think Najee Harris is a good player, but that doesn't mean that I think that their team is going to be particularly effective or efficient. And I'm fine taking Najee maybe at the end of the 2nd round because he projects to get over 70% of the opportunity on his team from a running back standpoint. But most of the players on the Steelers, I just feel like you're getting really thin if you're trying to take those guys where they're going.
Our boy Benjamin, before I go to Mark, you talked about Houston and avoiding Brandon Cooks, a guy that seems to produce wherever he goes. Is he a guy that you're interested in when you get in that range? He's going right now, I thought I'd be able to find it a lot quicker.
About the 9th.
He's going about the 8th.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, 9th round.
Yeah, he projects well when I run my projections, but that's because I don't know who else on that team to give yards to. But I think, in the FFPC, he's going at 804. I don't know, who's going to throw the ball to him. Is it going to be Tyrod Taylor? Do we think Tyrod Taylor is going to be throwing deep balls to Brandon Cooks, or do we think that Brandon Cooks is going to have to operate mostly underneath? How do we think that offense is going to be structured? Like in that same range of ADP, I think there's other guys that I can take that I've got a lot more confidence in. Like, Michael Gallup goes later, and I think I probably have more confidence that I know what Michael Gallup's going to be. Brandon Cooks might have slightly more upside, but the downside is much higher as well. So, I think Michael Gallup goes on average 5 picks later than Brandon Cooks. So, he's probably fairly priced for his ADP. Corey Davis goes in that same range. Deebo Samuel goes in that same range. If he's the number one option and over 20% of the targets flow through him, then obviously he's going to smash his ADP. But I don't think that you can have a reasonable confidence that that's the case going into the season. Hopefully it's the case, but I think that his ADP is priced in for that risk.
Yeah, and you could also see Houston trading him off at some point during the year too.
Or cutting him before the season. I think David Johnson's going to be cut before the season, just as an aside. But another guy that I would fade is just David Johnson, because I think there's a chance that Houston's final round of cuts before the season starts could be really wild, because they're cleaning house there to a degree that few teams ever have, and they're going to be getting rid of any impediments to young guys getting opportunity. So they could release players that you don't expect them to release. They could trade players you don't expect them to trade. Everything is on the table for that team because they're not planning on winning games this year, and they're willing to take Deshaun Watson and make him inactive every week. So whatever you think, like if you project the team out and you say, okay, these are their players, we've got this much opportunity that I've got to divide between all these players, I think you don't have a whole lot of reasonable confidence in knowing what their roster is going to look like. Even if they start the season with the guys that they've got now, what's it going to look like after Game 6 or Game 7? It could be completely different. They could release players mid-season because they know that it's all over and they're not going to be competitive. So it's one of the oddest situations I've ever seen in the NFL, the Texans this year, because they do not look like a team that has any interest in winning.
Right. And what's weird is, they really didn't really, they were draft capital poor coming into the year. And then they do stuff like, trade away 2 picks to move up in the 3rd round, and just weird stuff like that teams that are really trying to go all the way down to the bottom just shouldn't be doing. And and then they basically all the free agent signings were old guys and special teamers, so it was just kind of a weird offseason. I think you're exactly right on David Johnson. I think for whatever reason, the head coach likes Mark Ingram, I guess, just because of familiarity, if nothing else. And,
David Johnson was the player. David Johnson was the player they traded for DeAndre Hopkins.
Yep.
So, don't underestimate the catharsis of erasing a mistake with your fan base, basically saying, hey, we're turning over a new leaf. I think there's a lot of potential for that kind of thing as well.
Yeah. The funny thing is the right answer is don't draft any Houston running backs. But, when it gets down to the point where they're just so ridiculously cheap, I still have a hard time drafting either Lindsey or Mark Ingram, even though I know that they're the more likely options than David Johnson.
Yeah, Philip Lindsay has got some potential there, but they could just keep cutting guys moving down the list. They also signed Rex Burkhead, so that'll be fun.
Right.
So real quick on Brandon Cooks, I'm kind of a whore for volume in that 8th, 9th round range as far as wide receivers go, particularly in managed leagues. So I've been smashing Cooks in that range, and I've been smashing Devonta Smith in that range as 2 guys who are basically, in my opinion, being drafted at floor.
Love the Smith call.
Yep.
Yeah.
I can get it's for best ball. I like Cooks more than for managed leagues, but then again, I can wait a whole nother round and take Will Fuller, and I like Will Fuller a lot more than I like Brandon Cooks. So, it's just kind of a situation opportunity. If Cooks was going a little bit later, I'd be a lot more interested. But there's a lot of other guys kind of in that same area that I find myself gravitating towards more, just because I think I understand the situation a little bit better and there's less downside. But I totally understand seeing the volume and hoping that that all of it holds up for the full season.
Yeah, for me, it comes down to roster construction when I'm picking these guys at this point. How many receivers have I picked or not? Mark, our buddy Ryan Kania, league mate of mine, says he finds himself avoiding my Colts, unfortunately. Are you avoiding certain offenses? Is that something you base it on, or you're just doing huge volume and it's based on the individual players? And love the Devante Smith call, by the way.
Yeah, so this is actually going to be the last thing because I got to go for kiddo's bedtime. But I'm not necessarily fading entire offenses. I'm fading a certain position group, though, from offenses. So like Cleveland wide receivers, where Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham are being utilized in low upside roles. Like OBJ's highest upside role or route he's running is a go, and that's just not going to beat NFL defenses. He's running a lot of curls. He's running a lot of comebacks. Jarvis Landry running a lot of slants, a lot of curls. Like, these are not high upside routes. So if you look, like, the talent does not outweigh the way in which they are being used. Another way with the Colts, I'm fading Michael Pittman where he's going. He is more of a possession, big body win with his body attack at the point of at the high point, and he is being drafted as if he's going to see volume in that role, and I just don't see it. We're going to see a lot of weeks where he's seeing 6 to 8 low upside targets, and even at wide receiver 43, like, I'd rather just wait on Paris Campbell, his teammate, and take a player who has that self-generated yard after catch ability. Which we're not going to see in Michael Pittman. I love Noah's call on Miami's passing attack. I love Jalen Waddle even over Michael Pittman. I don't think a lot of the fantasy community is really reading into the fact that Miami offense is built for and around Tua. It's going to be heavy passing. Their offensive line is absolute garbage. And it's going to be basically the Tua show, and they brought in the weapons to make that happen this offseason. So love that call. Nicole Hardman, I have found myself not drafting at all. I think I took him once, and it ended up being my $200 single entry on DraftKings, the best ball. And it was basically a hedge. I was like, I'm not taking him in the millie, almost maxed that out. And if he's going to hit, what better place for it to do than on a single entry roster? So, Nicole Hardman, like, we could talk for hours about kind of what his fantasy perspective is this year, but I'm not taking him. I'm not buying the upside. He's had chances to step into the previous Sammy Watkins role in the past and hasn't capitalized on it. So that's another one fade for me. I think that's got to do it for me, boys.
All right.
Yeah, Mark, we appreciate your time, man. Remind the people where they can find you at HiLowFF. Anything else you want to share? Guys, make sure you follow Mark, man. He's got some good, and as you can see, it's the whole teaching how to fish thing, the strategy behind it that is what's key here.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm big on, the theory behind it. Call myself a game theory nut. If you want any more game theory stuff, season-long best ball, DFS, head over to oneweekseason.com and check me out there.
Appreciate you, Mark. Have a good night, brother.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you.
Later on.
All right, Noah, we got another 3 hours and 20 minutes with you.
Hopefully not.
We'll try to get it down to 220.
Just to add to Kylo's point, like, on Miami's passing attack, we've talked about Jalen Waddle, we've talked about Will Fuller, but Devante Parker's basically free. Like, you can take Devante Parker whenever you want, and he's one of the guys that, when I run projections for myself, he comes in as one of the best values versus ADP, just because you can get him. I'm scrolling down.
Middle of the 12th. Yeah, in the main.
He goes so late, and he's a guy that, really is paid to be their number one wide receiver and has shown flashes of it and been actually somewhat consistent with it the last 2 years. So I think I really like him where he's going at cost. He's kind of going right next to Ramondre Stevenson and Giovanni Bernard and James White and all these J.D. McKissick, all of these third down running backs that people pick, hoping to just get 5 points out of them for PPR purposes. And, that's not really where he should be going. I think he should be going up there, where Pittman's going or maybe earlier. So I like him where he goes a lot.
Dan, I know we're talking avoids, but we're talking Miami, Chicago. Like there's some of these offenses, New England later in drafts that if you waited on quarterback, you can start picking up receivers and stack yourself with your, whether it's your QB2 or even if, you want to go brave and go QB1 with a Mac Jones or Tua, it gives you those options. You're never worried as you do these drafts thinking, in a 1 QB, I'm going to wait because I can hit these guys late. The Zach Wilsons, just these offenses that you can get later in a stack sense are bringing value, I think, in kind of the discussion we're having.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you want to try to set yourself up for easy stacks if you can. And that's certainly one way to go is being able to, pull in the cheap quarterback too and have a couple options stacked with them. So, I've done that many times in the best ball leagues, and it's also something you can pull in the tournament leagues as well, the main event or football guys.
If you want another hot take, Mac Jones makes the Pro Bowl as a rookie.
Nice.
I like that.
Yeah.
We could easily see Zach Wilson and Mac Jones be 1 and 2 in rookie quarterback rankings at the end of this season.
Possibly.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, fantasy-wise, Mac Jones is going to have a little bit more trouble keeping up just because he probably isn't going to use his legs as much as some of these other guys. But the thing he's also got is he's starting from week 1. And, Lance isn't, Fields isn't, Wilson is. But, when you've got guys, you don't even know when they're going to hit the starting lineup. The bird in the hand is definitely worth more.
Yeah, I think he's going to throw pretty prolifically, more than people expect. And I think Jonnu Smith is like a top 6 tight end for me, which may also seem like a hot take, but I think he's going to be very good. The two of them, I think, will be very good together. So.
Yeah, and then behind him, you got a little guy named Hunter Henry, you know what I mean, which isn't too shabby. And they've put just really nice pieces around Mac Jones. And let's not forget that he's got Billy B, kind of guiding him through this rookie season, which always gives you a little notch.
I think Jonnu Smith is going to get deployed in a lot of different packages, which is part of why I'm as high on him as I am. I think that they lost Rex Burkhead in the offseason. I think some of that Rex Burkhead H-back piece of the offense is just going to be Jonnu Smith, maybe a little bit of Hunter Henry, but Jonnu Smith will take the place of Rex Burkhead in some of those packages. And then he's also going to be the tight end on the field a lot, and I think he and Hunter Henry are going to play a significant portion of snaps together. Maybe they'll be the first offense to go over 60% snaps for 2 tight ends at the same time since the last time the Patriots did it back in, I think, 2011. But I think that there's opportunities for them to do that within the functionality of the offense that they've already been playing by using some of those H-back type situations for Jonnu Smith, and that just gives him all that much more upside because if you take a tight end and you give him 2 rushing touchdowns along with some passing, receiving touchdowns and some, a good amount of receiving yards, it just boosts his value overall.
Yeah, for sure. Well, while we're on the subject of tight ends, how about tight end fades? You got any, Noah?
Tight end, the position overall is pretty gross. Once you get past that top group, let me just pull up tight end specific FFPC ADP real quick.
What's your general approach on the position? I know we talk often on the show, Dan, kind of if you miss those top whatever guys you consider in the top tier, maybe you wait later in the draft. What's your general approach, Noah, at the position?
So this year, what I've done is I've just taken Travis Kelce in the first round, or I've taken Jonnu Smith at the end of my draft. I think that's the case for almost every league that I'm in. There's a couple where I don't have Jonnu Smith and I kind of feel naked, but that's just because of how high I have him relative to his price.
Dan, I think Jonnu's ADP is about to go up a little bit, just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been getting him 10th round or later, so it's not like he's got a high opportunity cost, but it's just, I mean, you're either going to bet on a couple of outliers repeating with, Robert Tonyan and Logan Thomas both having those explosive years last year. TJ Hawkinson I like, but he's going in the 3rd round, and I can't pay a 3rd round price on TJ Hawkinson with the receivers that I'm interested in that same area, especially with what I think of the Lions offense overall. Noah Fant I like as a player, but his offense isn't very good, and his offense isn't very good. His quarterback's not very good, and he's not in the best of health right now. I think Logan Thomas has some potential because I think he's going to be on the field for just about every snap, but still, his ADP is in the 5th round. It's a little bit early for me. Dallas Goedert, I was excited about earlier in the offseason when there was potential for Ertz to be gone, but with Ertz back and the quarterback situation and everything else going on with the Eagles, I'm not really high on Dallas Goedert or Zach Ertz. Mike Gesicki is going as tight end number 12. I like Miami's passing offense, but I think it's a little bit more spread out now that they've got Parker, Waddle, and Will Fuller all there together. So I think that just narrows down the opportunity for Mike Gesicki. Yeah, I think the position overall is pretty gross. Jonnu Smith is going right next to Gerald Everett and Evan Engram, who broke his foot again in the final preseason game, and Rob Gronkowski, Hunter Henry. I mean, it's just there's not a lot of depth to the tight end position right now. So, you can take Blake Jarwin. I think Blake Jarwin, I was more excited about him last year than this year because this year he's going to be splitting reps with Dalton Schultz, and that kind of takes that value and splits it up between a few guys. I think he's a worthwhile start, but I think it's a little bit of a thinner play. There's just not a lot of tight ends that have a whole lot of value. I mean, after that, you're just trying to basically, get lucky with a Hayden Hurst or a Dan Arnold, even a Donald Parham. I mean, it just gets really thin. After
that, no, we get it. Unless it's Kelce or Jonnu, it's just we get it, man. We know it's just.
And I got to say that Noah faded my fade so hard that he didn't even mention him, Tyler Higbee.
I was gonna do an on the clock. I was gonna go Jonnu Higbee. Literally,
I would take. I mean, if they were going in the same spot in drafts, I would still take Jonnu over Higbee. But I would take Jonnu rounds before Higbee, just personally, because I don't have a whole lot of expectation for Higbee myself. He's probably fine as the 9th tight end just because the 5 of the tight ends ahead of them are garbage too. So, I just think the tight end position is really, really bad if you don't get Kelce. Waller is great. He's just his ADP is now in the 1st round, and I don't want to pay a 1st round price. Kittle is great, but his ADP is in the middle of the 2nd round in FFPC. Pitts is in the 3rd round. Hawkinson's in the 3rd round. Mark Andrews is in the 4th round. I think Mark Andrews, of that group of 3 or 4 right there, Mark Andrews is probably the best value because so many of their receivers are hurt. But, still, it's a 4th round price. So I think I'd prefer to just get Kelce or get Jonnu late or get somebody else late. Maybe I may be too high on Jonnu. That's fairly possible, but just the way that I see the Patriots offense working, I think that Jonnu's got a lot of upside.
Yeah, I'm pretty much, once you get down to Jonnu, Everett, Grant, Komet, that's where I start getting interested again, just because the price is so much cheaper, and I can draft 2 or 3 of those guys, and just cobble together a starter by having, 3 guys basically down in that range.
Yep, I think that's totally understandable. I mean, you could even grab a guy like CJ Uzoma and hope that he looks like he did before his injury last year, because he was one of my favorites last year at price, because his price was nothing. You could take him with your last pick, and he delivered on it before he got injured middle of the season.
Yep, for sure.
And again, easy way out for me. It's all about the roster construction, right? Did I take Kelsey early, and then like my boy Wheeler here talking about Croft? Am I going to wait for Croft as my tight end too? But just saying, like, those middle guys, I'm probably going to double tap middle guys if I do wait, just to kind of give myself a nice balance, like in a best ball. But yeah, I think that the tight end position, there's different ways you could play it. You can take your safe guys early, like you said, Noah. Guys taking Waller in the first round. It's kind of like what we talked about with who we were talking about earlier in the kind of drafting him in his dream scenario or Pitts. When guys taking him in the third round, you're expecting him to basically hit the perfect scenario or narrative, and it's the same with taking Waller in the first round. So I think there's different ways to skin a cat, and that's what we love about fantasy. There's different ways, especially in those tight end premiums, to approach the tight end position. But for me, it always depends on roster construction. Maybe I'm waiting later, Dan, like you do, if I miss on those first guys. But me, I'm taking 3 in that draft, versus 2 if I took 1 or 2 a little earlier. So, Noah, I'm going to come back to you. We've touched, we've kind of worked our way down a draft, hitting on the different positions. But you do a lot of these drafts, and especially the high-stakes guys. Are there guys that you see being taken in the later rounds that are pure traps? Like, and I hate to say, but we haven't played your favorite.
It's a trap.
Like, I'm just so... Dan, I'm so mesmerized by all the goodness that's being dropped tonight. I just forgot to use the drop. But Noah, in the later rounds, someone you see Fantasyland making a mistake on?
Not. I mean, the mistakes that you make in the latter rounds are taking guys or passing on guys that you should have taken. Like, there's guys that are going late that I think should be going earlier, and I think that's more of a mistake than taking a guy late that you shouldn't be taking.
Do you have a couple of those nuggets for us? Maybe 1.5 for us.
Yeah, I mean, I would take. I think Curtis Samuel as the wide receiver 50 is a great value, because he's got tremendous upside if things go the right way for him in that offense. So the wide receiver 50 being Curtis Samuel, a guy that you can get at 10.05, I think that's a nice value.
Now, does that mean for you that Fitz plays most of the season, or it doesn't really matter?
It does. Fitz needs to play. I mean, they just don't have really anybody else. But there's guys like that have a whole lot of upside, like Bryan Edwards. Really, whether you believe in Bryan Edwards and the hype machine that's being built up around him on the Raiders, if you believe it or not, he's going to be one of the only receivers that they play. John Brown's not there anymore. Bryan Edwards is going to be basically an every down wide receiver. And he's going at the end of the 11th. He might be their number 1 wide receiver. And we were talking about teams earlier that nobody's really drafting players from. Mm-hmm. On the Raiders, people are taking Darren Waller in the first round, but Bryan Edwards in the 12th. So, there's upside there. It's just basically the guys that you're taking late in drafts is where you want to take swings at potential massive upside. That's not what you want to be doing in the earlier rounds. And there's guys that, if Bryan Edwards really is what the Raiders say that he is, he should be like a wide receiver 2, not, your team's wide receiver 6. So, because he's going right with Cole Beasley, for example. What's Cole Beasley's upside versus, Cole Beasley's a high floor player. I don't really want high floor players in the 12th round of a draft. I'm looking for some home runs, and otherwise I can just cut him and pick up somebody else. So really, it just comes down to the way that I structure my teams more than anything. I'm looking to swing for home runs late, not really swinging for singles.
The younger guys, right? Like you're not grabbing AJ Green.
No, I'll grab AJ Green. I mean, he's another guy. If he's healthy, he's got a lot of upside. But where he's going, he's priced more at his floor than he is at his ceiling. So if he goes close to his ceiling, then he would be a great pick. So he's a guy I wouldn't mind taking him. And then if he's not involved week 1, just cut him and pick up Rondale Moore. It's you have a little bit of optionality to take a couple shots on some players that could have some extreme upside.
Anytime Rondale Moore gets spoken of in a positive way, we love it. As my number 1 owned rookie.
Mighty Mouse.
Mighty Mouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't do the AJ Green. I just can't.
I can't either. That's why I brought it up.
I cannot get there.
I understand it, but can I interest you in him at the price of free?
Yeah, no,
the problem is there are too many other free guys that I would rather
when it's free, there's always upside, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
at least he's not a free guy that's been cut. People were spending draft picks for a while on Antonio Callaway and Devin Funchess and
right.
Some of these other players, Travis Fulgham, who I think he shouldn't have been cut, but he's been cut. There's a bunch of other late round shots that people have been taking that
you're not taking Quez Watkins.
I'm not taking Eagles.
All right,
it's a business decision for Noah.
Yeah, he's also a Cowboys fan. Full disclosure.
I'm not a Cowboys fan.
Oh, you're not?
I just live next to the facility. That's all.
All right. So, Dan, it seems like a touchy topic. We won't dive deeper into that one.
It's really not. But for example, a guy that you can take late, Deshaun Jackson is free. You can take Deshaun Jackson.
I love that.
If he stays healthy, I mean, it could be a home run. Deshaun Jackson playing with Matthew Stafford, that could be beautiful. It could be.
Could be.
Probably won't be, but it could be.
Yeah, but at his price, Noah, if he gives me 2 weeks, I'm happy.
Yeah, it's like I said earlier. Can I interest you in a price of free?
Yeah, exactly. It's like Dan's got me on KJ Hamler all over the place. I just love taking him late in these drafts.
Yep. He's a good one. Josh Palmer, Nico Collins.
Paris, maybe?
Paris, yeah. Yes.
Jalen Rager's free. Yeah,
Jalen Rager's
I'm going to take a shot.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a shot on an Eagle. He's going at 13-11 right now is his ADP. Jalen Rager's free, and he's a good receiver. He might be their number 2, so it's a guy worth taking a shot on.
Is MVS kind of a value for you guys? Just going in the 15th round with Rodgers coming back, and we've seen the flashes with MVS.
I've certainly taken him. So
yeah, I have too. I've taken him, and I've picked him up on a couple of teams with waivers where I took a different upside guy that didn't work out, and I just kind of churned to the bottom of the roster and picked up MVS. But yeah, I mean, he's totally viable. Nelson Aguilar is completely viable. If Nelson Aguilar actually becomes the number 2 wide receiver for the Patriots, he could be very viable. And especially if you're in leagues that take deep passing into account, maybe award deep passing more than other methods, like some of the leagues that I play. Nelson Aguilar is very interesting in that format, and he's going in the 15th as well. There's a lot more viable late round receivers than running backs for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely good, valid point. And shout out to Benjamin Cunningham backing my MVS, or buddy Ben. Always a pleasure to be in the DMs with. And Noah, man, this has been a blast. Let me just touch on one more position before we close this down. I know you've got some squats to work behind you there. So going back to the quarterback position, you've got people super high right now on these rookie quarterbacks. What are your thoughts on the landscape? Are all 5 of these guys here to stay? Do you see one of these guys maybe being a bigger trap, or even a couple of these guys when we're looking at these quarterbacks? I know we've touched on them a bit tonight, but I know our buddy Theo, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, just trying to rest up, being a little stuck with a cold. But he was asking, is there staying power in these quarterbacks, and how are you approaching the rookie class when it comes to that position?
So I liked Trey Lance a lot as a prospect, and I liked when the 49ers picked him, and I expected to be higher than consensus on him going into the season. But boy, am I surprised, because he's going as the quarterback 11 in FFPC leagues in the main event. His ADP is quarterback 11. I think he might even be higher than that in the Football Guys Players Championship. So, at that price, I don't think that I'm very interested, but I thought I was going to be high on him, but less so if that's his cost. Justin Fields, similarly, is going as the quarterback 12. So both of those a lot earlier than I expected. So I would probably avoid Justin Fields at that ADP, just because I'd rather have some of these guys that are going a little bit later. I would rather have Tua as my quarterback for fantasy than Justin Fields, just because I don't think Justin Fields will be starting right away, and I don't like carrying two quarterbacks on my rosters. And then even when Justin Fields gets in, it's probably good for Allen Robinson and some of the other weapons, but he's still going to be hampered by Matt Nagy being his play caller. So I'd probably be a little bit lower than quarterback 12 on Justin Fields, just because of opportunity cost and the other guys going behind him and around him. I think Mac Jones as quarterback 20 is fine. Zach Wilson goes right next to him at quarterback 19. At least those guys are going to be starting the full season. But, those guys I think are pretty fairly priced. Maybe I would have Mac Jones a little bit higher, but, he doesn't have the rushing upside, so that's probably about right. But, quarterbacks, there's not a whole lot of value. Like for me, if I don't get one of the top couple of guys or Tom Brady, I'll just take Matthew Stafford or Ryan Tannehill as one of the last quarterbacks that's taken as a team's first quarterback. I'll just take Matthew Stafford or Ryan Tannehill and roll with those guys. And I think Sam Darnold makes a good quarterback too. Like if you're in a super flex, I like taking Sam Darnold a little bit later. I think he's got a pretty solid upside. And then I've also been taking Mac Jones as my quarterback 3 in super flexes. Of course, now that he's named starter, he's moved up a little bit, but I think the quarterback ADP is pretty solid for the most part. Justin Herbert feels like he's going a little bit early to me, but he's settled down a little bit. Jalen Hurts feels like he's going early, but of course that's people hoping for some rushing upside. Quarterback 8 feels a little bit rich, but
Dallas fan, Houston, Dallas.
I don't have a fandom. It's just.
It's because you're like, whenever I think of Pollard, I think of Noah Ruddell, so it's like I just have like the Dallas star imprinted in my brain, it's just that's how it works. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who do you cheer for? Do you cheer for a team?
No, I don't cheer for a team. I cheer for players that I like. I don't like cheering for teams.
See, Dan, this is why Noah, just like I said, whenever he's not doing this, he's making money, because he knows how to separate, the emotions with like what the hell he needs to do. The rest of us.
It helps not having much emotions.
Yeah. Well, I'm ostensibly a Vikings fan, but after 50 plus years of such fandom, I've learned to.
You're a battered spouse.
I am, exactly. I've embraced the fantasy football industry just because if I'm going to win a title, I'm going to have to do it on my own. I'm not going to be able to live vicariously through the Vikings. So, Dan Masterson's asking, when do you think Lance starts? Feels like it might be a bit with the injury. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I think they were close to 50-50 on whether they were going to start him week 1, and then with the little finger injury, I think that might delay it a couple of weeks. So, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before Lance starts. And I liked him a lot, but I expected that I would be able to get him around QB 20 or QB 22 ADP wise. I still think he's good, and I think that the offense has some upside, but they do run the ball a lot, and he's going to have some rushing upside, which is nice, but for a price of QB 11, I think that's a little bit rich for me, just because he's not starting week 1, and I'm going to have to draft him as my QB1 and then take another quarterback later to support it for the first couple of weeks, which just isn't something that I generally like to do. So I haven't ended up with much of Trey Lance for that reason.
Yeah. And, Trey Lance, an interesting topic, I think, when you're thinking redraft, especially with these big money tournaments. I found myself in scenarios where, I picked up Kittle and Ayuk, and it's, you're like, do I grab Lance here? Do I, it's just because, again, you could be Mahomes circa his first season and Buddy's sitting on your bench. And like you said, he's going pretty early, for the price is a little hefty, for assuming that he's going to give you the production to validate it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the price is just the only thing that puts me off of him. I still think he's a good talent, and I think their offense will be pretty good, but it's going to lean more heavily on running the ball than you would like. I think Brandon Ayuk goes too high personally. I would put him as it's a trap play, just because I don't think he'll have the volume consistently that you want him to have if you're drafting him as a top. I think he's taken as a wide receiver 2 right now.
Yeah,
he's taken right there at the end of the wide receiver 2s.
Fifth round.
Yeah, so 5th round is if it was 4th round, that would be really thin for me. But he's not quite a fade at in the 5th round.
Is Debo a better value a couple rounds later for you?
A better value, yes. I would say that Brandon Ayuk should probably be taken before Deebo Samuel, but I think it's a lot closer than their ADP. Deebo Samuel, I think, goes at 707. I would like to see Brandon Ayuk maybe at like 608, and then Deebo Samuel at 707. I think that makes more sense. Still, it's probably about where Deebo Samuel should be going, but I think most of the 49ers ADP is a little bit too high, just because I think that offense will be fairly spread out.
Guys, if you're not following Noah Ruddell on the Twitter machine, you're missing out in many ways. Not just in fantasy, like Dan said, he's a little under the radar. I'll give a shout out to Noah for this, among many things. I mean, I appreciate all the goodness he brought tonight. Like I said, our biggest download a couple of years ago for a reason, but just introduced me to crypto, just in general. And I know he smiles, but dude, like literally, you're the only reason I went down that rabbit hole, and it's benefited me and my family in many ways. And I want to thank you for that, because I love going down those rabbit holes when it's worth it, and it was definitely worth it. And I've learned a lot. And I love kind of I was kind of picking your brain when we got on the mic earlier, just because we haven't chatted in a while. But I appreciate you in fantasy, and I appreciate you, and hopefully our listeners and our audience tonight, along with all the goodness you drop, can follow you out there in Twitter land and get some of that goodness as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. Happy to do it, and hope you guys have a lot of success this season with all of your teams, and go ship something. Let's do it.
You too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
Sure.
All right.
Danny boy, another good one. You always throw me off when the flow is not in full effect, but that's all right. I'll get used to it eventually. I'm not going to show my lack of flow, that's for sure. But anything to add? I know this was a big one. I know you, Noah's another guest that you respect, a friend of yours out there in Twitter land. Anything to add? And any advice? Because you're like the wise one on the show. And guys, we're going into week 1, man. This is it. This is we've planted flags, we've traded, we've done all that. It's time to perform. Dan, what are the wise words?
The wise words are re-listen to this podcast and just not only catch the specifics of what we've gone over today, but also just there's a lot from Mark and Noah both about teaching you how to value players rather than what are they how did they get to where they got on their player valuations. And to me, that's the most important thing of all, is once you kind of learn how to evaluate players on your own, then you have a lot more confidence in what you're doing when you're drafting, and it enables you, especially if you know what types of performance, like that was one of the things that Mark alluded to, knowing how to pair a performer who's going to be a little bit more up and down with somebody who's likely to be a little bit more steady, and just building teams that way. So there's a lot of goodness in this podcast, and so very, very well worth it. And, always enjoy having both Noah and Mark on.
For sure, man. Noah and Mark, awesome guest tonight, awesome show tonight. And, just as we approach this first game, the first kickoff this week, Dan, we're going to give away 2 or 3, little action on the FFPC. Our friends, the FFPC, you want to get a last best ball in there, $35. We'll hook you guys up with some little bonuses on the site. Tag Dan or I at Goat District, at Override Sleeper, no E on the end, and we'll hook you guys up. We'll do a quick draw between now and kickoff. So whether you give us shout out to the show, like on YouTube, or a like on your favorite podcast platform, show us that on Twitter machine, and we'll enter you into the draw. And we'll just we'll give out maybe 4 or 5, Dan. Maybe 4 or 5. We'll go 4 or 5. Give back to our listeners. You guys have been awesome all off season. I hope you guys benefited. I hope you guys digested all the goodness we brought. If you haven't checked out all the shows, especially the last couple months, guys, literally, Noah's a perfect example, and Mark, just some of the biggest players on, in fantasy land. And if they're on here and they were brought here, there's a reason, guys. So if you're not following that goodness, make sure you are. Smash the like, smash the subscribe as usual. Check out myffpc.com. All our friends over at FFPC, Viridian Global. You see me with the hat, the True North gear on right now. Dan's got his DWZ. Shout out to the Dynasty Warzone, Randy and the boys over there, Jerry. Guys, your favorite podcast, even your favorite players. There's a Hawkinson shirt, Dan, with the Incredible Hulk. That I'm going to be ordering soon, as well as a Gibby piece. But guys, go check it out and stick with us this season, guys. We helped you all off season. We got you ready to dominate your leagues. Let us know how you're doing, and tune in with us this season, because we're going to help you just continue to dominate those leagues. Appreciate you. Check you all later.
Goat District, the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offer's the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man. Y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
Noah, that was awesome, buddy. We appreciate all the goodness. And you never even brought up that week 1 starter you were talking about. What was that guy you were talking about? The